this could possibly be the worst Dvar Torah that you're ever going to hear, or it could be an inspiring one. I hope not to enrage you, but to inspire you. But this is an idea that came to me that I'd like to share with you. And if you are faint of heart, this is a good time to click the off button. If you'd like to continue, let's start. A few decades ago, Rabbi Yaakov Frank was in the military service in Eretz Yisrael, and it was very, very rainy. It was a downpour, and he was seeking shelter under some kind of a roof extension. And there's another soldier over there seeking shelter, and they're exchanging, what's my name, what's your name, and then the other soldier, he asked him, what is your connection to the famous Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank? What's your connection to him? He's like, well, it's my grandfather. What do you mean? So he's like, wow, that's so interesting. And they continue talking, and they're there for a long time. And one of the stories that are shared through this interim of time is a personal story that Rabbi Frank was a big Rav in Yerushalayim for several decades, maybe like 3 decades or so. And what's the story? In 1929, there was a Bachar in Yeshiva, in Yeshivas Chevron, that was enjoying it, having a wonderful time. However, the parents, they heard about how violent the Arabs are over there and how dangerous it is, the climate over there. And they were afraid for their son's life to be in Chevron surrounded by all these hateful people. And they were rethinking the whole idea of sending their child to such a dangerous place. And the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivas Chevron, he contacted his good friend, Rabbi Frank, the very famous Rav of Yerushalayim, to help, because he thought it was a wonderful Bachar, and he was adding to the yeshiva atmosphere, and the yeshiva benefited from him, he benefited from the yeshiva, and he really thought it was a wonderful shidduch for the boy. But how is he going to reassure the parents? So he asked his good friend, Rabbi Frank in Yerushalayim, to intercede. And Rabbi Frank, he actually wrote a very emotional letter, how he thinks so highly of the Rosh Yeshiva in Yeshivas Chevron, and how he personally knows him, and the quality of the limud over there, of the learning, is so high, and he actually gave a guarantee that he guarantees that this Bachar's life is on his neck. He gives a full guarantee that he's going to be okay. And the parents, even though they're very fearful, and they were worried for their beloved son, they decided, you know what? We're going to trust Rabbi Frank, and we're going to leave him in the yeshiva. Unfortunately, soon thereafter, the Arabs, they had a massacre of 67 or 69 Jewish people in Hebron, amongst them 24 people in the Yeshivas Hebron, and amongst those, that boy was one of the murdered individuals, Hashem Yikom Damam. Now, as devastating as it was for the parents, it was also devastating for Rabbi Frank, because he felt personally responsible, that he gave his guarantee, and he was going to ensure that everything is going to be okay. And unfortunately, this tragedy happened. Now, from that day on, he himself was broken. You could see that it was not the same. From that day, something within him shattered, this famous rabbi. Now, the parents, so basically, he tells him this, and he kind of tells him this personal tragedy and how he has been affected for all these decades. So this is the grandson telling his new friend over there in the IDF. And this boy, this other man, he tells him, I'm actually a history buff. It's very interesting for me, history. And I've studied actually the Jewish settlement in the land of Israel before the state of Israel. And I actually have some information about this particular murder that perhaps you don't even know about. So he's like, what do you mean? He's like, I know the story, and I've researched it very, very well. And this murder of this boy changed the course of history. What do you mean? So he said, the family of this boy were very affluent and they're very influential within many, many different circles. And they exerted whatever power that they had to change the governing forces or whatever, as representatives in Britain. Because unfortunately, the British knew that there's going to be a massacre, and they did nothing to avert this catastrophe. And there's a very big anti-Semite who is governing the whole area, and they basically did everything that they could that he should be fired, and they replaced him with somebody who was a really wonderful individual, General Arthur Rocco, who actually completely transformed the whole mood because of this family. Now, this family is interceding on the behalf of all the Jewish over there, all the Jewish people that are over there, and by appointing this individual that was actually a very kind-hearted individual, changed the whole landscape of Israel. How? He issued thousands upon thousands of visas entering from Europe, from Nazi Europe, to come into Israel. So he saved thousands of lives that otherwise would not have been saved. And furthermore, there's a second wind of this. And what is that? That these individuals and their children and children's children became the fighting forces to defend the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael. So there's a double victory, so to speak, or a double wave of effect that is reverberating to this day from this one person's death. Now, this individual, this grandson of Rabbi Frank, he basically, Rabbi Yaakov Frank, he was shocked. His grandfather had to hear this other side of the story because he never knew the other side of the story. He only knew what kind of, the beginning, the tragedy, the trauma. He had no idea that there's a good end, so to speak, or there's a positive that actually resulted from this whole tragic circumstance. And he went home after that, that day, and he spoke to his wife, I really have to go to Yerushalayim and travel to my grandfather, tell him this good news. And his wife said, but we're going on Shabbos, we're going to visit him on Shabbos. Why can't you wait? Like, no. He's been harboring all this for so many years. I have to tell him right now. I have to tell him right this, today. And he travels all the way over there to Yerushalayim. And he basically can't wait to tell his grandfather. And he tells the grandfather's other side of the story, that this murder actually resulted in the salvation of so many Jewish people, that they're benefiting from this to this day from this individual's murder and the resulting influence of the family. And the grandfather's eyes lit up, and he told him, you have no idea what you have done for me. You have no idea how you basically uplifted me. And he was really happy to be the bearer of good news, and he left home. The next day, he heard the bad news that his grandfather passed away. Wow. So he was able to complete the circle and relieve something that was living within him unfinished and give him a closure, a positive closure. Now, I said this story in a very strange situation in a Shavar Bachas, and I wanted to personalize it and to basically bring it home. How do we personalize it? I'm going to try to personalize it also to you and to me now, but I'm going to use this Shavar Bachas metaphor as a mashal. When a person is, God forbid, murdered or killed or dies, people sit Shiva, 7 days. Also, by a Shavar Bachas, there's Sheva. There's also, you're sitting Shiva. It's a little bit of a different situation. It's more happy, but it's also Shiva. What's the connection between one Shiva and the other Shiva? So this is an idea. You don't have to agree with me. But perhaps we could say that there's a certain Shiva that's happening also when people are getting married. Why is that? It's because there's a death. There's a death of the self. It's the me is no longer. I can't just think about me, myself, and I, what I want and what I think. I have to be thinking about the other now. I have to think of the spouse. I have to think of the children. So there has to be a little bit of a death of the me and now there has to be a different birth of the we. And this other centeredness, instead of being self-centered, other-centered, or we-centered, could give birth to children, to grandchildren. So there's a certain sacrifice, but that sacrifice is for something that is much, much greater to come. So I was also thinking to personalize it to us, that we're going into the week, and the week also is 7 days. It's also a Shiva in a sense. So to suggest perhaps to connect all this to ourselves is that maybe we should also sit Shiva in a sense, meaning to say we should strive to kind of be other-centered, think of the we, and the I, just thinking of the me, should basically die in a certain sense for the greater good. We should all, through our togetherness, should give birth to a new reality, a geula, shlema, techva mamash.
Amen.